Well, if we're gonna find any ghosts, we better split up.
You're listening to Never Split Up, a horror movie podcast.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Hi everyone, welcome back. This is episode 67 of the Never Split Up podcast. My name's Nolan along with Anthony, and today we are going to do a little coverage of Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror released in 1922. What's up, Ant? How you doing?
I'm good. How's it going?
Going good. We are recording this a week before Christmas. This is going to be released on Christmas Eve. As you guys know, we are eagerly anticipating the new release of Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers, that's coming out on Christmas Day. So we figure we cover where it all started, kind of where it all started with Dracula and almost, the entire horror genre. We're getting all the way back to the 20s. This is by far the earliest movie we've covered. This is our first silent film.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes. And we discussed before this episode, this isn't going to be like a traditional review. This is going to be a lot shorter than our normal reviews. We're mainly going to talk about, because everyone knows the story of Dracula, and we just want to talk about just the differences and like what the history is of Nosferatu and how it relates to Dracula, because I know some people can be confused. And then we'll just do like a little refresher of the movie just to get people up to speed for this big new release that's coming on Christmas Day. But yeah, this is going to be like a quick little almost recap of the movie and kind of what's going on, so people feel a little bit more educated going into this new remake. Did you get a chance to rewatch this silent film, and how what's your experience with Nosferatu growing up?
I did rewatch it. I rewatched it yesterday, and my experience is, after I really started to get into horror, I went back to the classics. I'm not talking about, classics to me, I'm talking like Halloween's a classic to me, but these are like the classics.
Oh, yeah.
So I made it a point, like my parents weren't like, watch Nosferatu. Like my mom saw a commercial for the new one. She's like, oh, what's Nosferatu? Like, they don't know Nosferatu like we do. So I had to make it a point, like, probably in my like teens, to go back and check out like the classics. So I saw it once. I saw it a couple times. I've watched it a couple of times over the years. Obviously, it's a special, important movie, but it's not a movie that I'm obsessed with, and I'm not going to lie, I don't like rewatch it really at all, but I know it's an important piece of cinema history, so I have respected it 100%.
Yeah, it's almost disingenuous to call it a classic, because like you said, like the classics are like, The Exorcist and, stuff from the golden age of cinema. This is just like even more important. It's like the foundation of cinema. Right. I mean, this is literally like where it all started. 1922, where we are going back to the first couple decades of even just seeing pictures and film.
Exactly.
We could talk a little bit about the history. I mean, this wasn't the first ever horror film. I know that's credited to the House of the Devil, aka the Haunted Castle, was in the 1800s. That's I think widely regarded as like the first quote unquote horror film, even though there wasn't a horror genre. And then you get into like the earliest 20th century, and you get into the German Expressionist movement, which is what Nosferatu is. And then you really don't get the horror genre until a movie we covered, which was Dracula, which obviously is very similar to Nosferatu. That was 1931. That's when we really started to get formations of a genre. So this is going back almost 10 years before that. So, there really wasn't even a concept. Nobody was calling it horror or scary. It was kind of just, like I said, kind of expressionist. And, it was around World War I. I know that had a lot of influence, especially in Germany. So there was influences there. And this is a very dark tale that they intertwined. And, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know all of them, but I did a little research for this podcast episode, and I want to talk about some of the differences that they did deviate from the book, and we'll get into that. I mean, a lot of it was because of copyright, issues, which ended up getting him in the end anyway. But another part of it was because it was a German film and it was during World War I that they tailored the story for Germans. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. But before we dive too into it, do you want to make a couple announcements? We have a couple things to go over. I know we did a poll and you wanted to kind of shout out some things.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, thank you so much for checking out one of our recent episodes, The Fog. It's been one of our most successful episodes since we've been back from our hiatus. And I did post a poll for that one, our Never Split Up poll, and Nolan just came out on top by 1 vote. So thank you for coming out and voting. I'm actually going to start also putting our polls on YouTube. I figured out that I have access and I'm able to do that. So make sure you're voting on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. That'll be fun. Hopefully get more interaction on YouTube with that. And we just released, we're recording this the day that our Silent Night, Deadly Night episode came out. So it's Christmas time, guys. Get in the Christmas spirit and go check out that episode. That was a fun slasher to cover. I thought we had a really good conversation. And also, we've been slacking with shouting out some reviews. So I just wanted to shout out one of our more recent reviews from a couple months ago from Cosmic Ragnarok. He gave a nice little 5-star review, and he said, awesome horror movie podcast that isn't afraid to talk about some of the older and sometimes forgotten about horror movies. Love it. Great feedback. Again, we appreciate you guys. If you rate us on the podcast or subscribe and comment and share any reviews, it helps the algorithm. So appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions or, constructive criticism, we're obviously always welcome for that too.
For sure, yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the podcast and the more recent episodes. And yeah, thank you for your reviews. Keep them coming. I believe that was a review that was on the Apple podcast side.
Yes.
That helps us a lot on that end with Apple. I know Apple rewards podcasts that have a lot of starred reviews and also written reviews. So keep it up. Thank you so much for that review. That really warms my heart because I feel like we do try to balance that. We try to do bigger titles, but we haven't gotten too obscure yet. We can get pretty obscure on this podcast, but we're trying to balance it and trying to do some cool titles that people haven't heard of as well. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, that's great. I don't know if we're gonna do a Never Split Up moment for this. There are moments, but this isn't really a conventional review, so we'll probably save that for next year because this is our last kind of movie review of the year. But let's get into it. Let's Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. Do you want to go over the director and some of the cast, which we're not going to know who they are, but you might as well anyway?
So Nolan said
years ago.
Crazy. Nolan said this is a silent movie. So this is our first silent film we're covering. 1922. Crazy. So it is a German expressionist vampire film, and it was directed by F.W. Murnau, and it stars Max Schreck as Orlok, Greta Schroeder as Ellen, and Gustav von Wangenham as Hutter. So that's our main trio right there. And it is a very, very, very moody movie. So I'm excited. I don't know. There's not a lot to review it. It's weird because of, like Nolan said, it's just an important movie to cinema. Much like Dracula, it's going to be hard to review this one. And like I said, it's not one that I obviously, I'm not going to lie and be pretentious and say I go back and watch all the time because I don't. But I've seen it and I respect it, and it's special. It's special. I found myself smirking a lot on my rewatch just because this movie's silent, so they can't rely on dialogue. So it's a very physical movie. It's almost like a play. You can see their physical acting and their facial expressions that really stood out to me, and I appreciated that.
It's funny you say that because I almost wish that, because you said that you can't rely on dialogue, but there is a lot of dialogue with the written text.
Well, the script, yeah.
Obviously.
I like that, by the way.
I feel like there should have been less of that, and we could have gotten a little bit more just kind of body acting, because I feel like sometimes in this movie it kind of I don't want to get too critical, but the pacing can be disrupted by all that text because it has the text of the characters, and then it has the text, the subtext of the narration, and you're trying to balance between the two. And don't even get me started on the font. The font is really hard to read, and you're like, what is that saying? So I feel like this movie could have benefited from less of that and really leaned into kind of the silent of this film, because that does kind of break it up a little bit too much. Not to get, again, not to get too critical. We're talking
I get
120 years ago, but
I get they had to get their narrative across and describe what was going on, but I agree. I think as the movie went on too, it got like more and more. Like in the beginning, I was like, okay, Act 1, a couple things here and there, and then it was like the dialogue, because stuff starts happening obviously as the movie goes on, and it's like paragraphs of dialogue.
But I will say, in the movie's defense, we have the benefit of knowing this story so well, like the back of our hand. I mean, the story of Dracula. There have been so many adaptations of it throughout history, so we don't need that dialogue as much. So this was the first real interpretation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, audiences in Germany in 1922, they needed that. So I can't really fault the movie for, adding that for that context. But, looking back over 100 years later, we know this story so well. It's like, okay, let's go. So that's kind of a privilege on our end, I guess.
Oh, for sure. And it obviously did have an impact on audiences when it was released, even with all that dialogue, because I read that it was banned in Sweden due to excessive horror when it came. Well, I know it's crazy to think about that today, but I mean, this was a first. So I can imagine myself being transferred back in 1922 and be like, oh my God, what's that creepy Orlok? Like, I'd be frightened. And it's a very atmospheric movie, even today when I watch it. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of atmosphere. More atmospheric than Dracula, I will say.
Yes, I'll agree. And that kind of leads me to my first point. The difference is that they kind of adapted this movie from the book, but they changed a lot. And I feel like most of that is kind of the atmosphere and kind of the overall themes of this movie. It relies heavily in the occult. I know the makers of this movie, I forget their names, but the German... Not just the director, but the producers and the writers of the script were heavily into the occult and all that. So it dives into the occult. I know Orlok is linked to it in in Germanic history. He's linked to like demons and stuff. Apparently, he Count Orlok before he became a vampire. I guess their interpretation is that he was into like dark sorcery and kind of summoned a demon, which turned him into a vampire. So that's very different from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Dracula was known as a warrior and stuff in his time, and he kind of got turned. So they did changes like that, which adds to the mood and adds to the creepiness when you know that context. Another big thing is Orlok does not convert people to vampirism. He just kills people, and he brings death and brings what the characters thought was the plague, with his rats and everything. I mean, that was pretty prominent back then. I believe, what was it? The Spanish flu, I think, was going around at that time. I think it was the Spanish flu. So that was pretty prominent. I can imagine, I'm trying to picture myself as a German moviegoer in 1922. This might have been someone's very first movie that they've ever seen, like in a cinema. So to see that on the big screen when you're going through it in real life must have been horrifying, Oh,
I agree 100%. Just from everything you're saying, that all those things, like, that's setting a precedent for the horror genre.
Oh,
so this movie is one of the foundations for the horror genre alone. So that, to me, is, like, so important. And just going back to what you said about, how when, the typical Bram Stoker Dracula stories, it's a gothic romance. Like first, like you said, he bites them and turns them. But in this, there is that, Ellen has a lovely neck and all that. But he's killing people. And for me, we've gotten a taste of my preference of vampire movies on this podcast, where I like gothic horror romances with the vampire stories. But from my favorite two, I lean towards more of the just scary vampires who just want to kill you. And that's what this movie also has over Dracula. It's more about death. And, my taste in vampire movies lean towards that more than the gothic romance side.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I feel like nowadays you get one or the other, right? You get the more monster creature type vampires, or you get the romance. But I feel like if you go all the way back to Nosferatu, I mean, it kind of rode that line. Like you said, it was, he was infatuated with Ellen, but he was still kind of this monster. He had the fangs in the front, like looked like a rat, rat's teeth. So exactly. he was very less. He was very much less humanoid, and he was more of a monster, like a creature, than what we're used to when it comes to Dracula. So I feel like it had a little bit of both, and that's kind of why I'm excited for this new interpretation, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I feel like he's going to try to toe that line too, because he said in interviews that this is a dark, gothic, romance movie, but it's also super spooky and scary. So I hope he kind of toes that line and kind of we get the best of both worlds.
I really hope he takes a page out of this one, and I'm pretty sure I saw like a little clickbait where he said that he wanted his Nosferatu to be a horror movie first before the romance. So I'm really hoping that that's true when we see the movie, and he takes a page out of this and say you can have the gothic, old time romance, but I heard it's like actually gets a little like it's just like freaky in the new, like freaky sexy, not like more love story. It's like a little little horny or something, I've heard. But
I've heard that,
but I want him to go full horror. That's my one, because I've never had an Eggers movie like go full horror for me, and that's why I think this one might be my favorite of his, and I really hope he's just sticking to like he kills people. And I have a feeling just from like I've stayed away from a lot of the promotion because I'm over trailers for movies and stuff. I don't want to be spoiled, but just from like the little images and things, I'm thinking he's gonna go dark, and I just hope he takes a page out of this. He's not afraid to go dark by today's standards, where this one pushed the boundaries for when this one came out. I know it's not gonna be the scariest movie ever made, but you know what I mean. I want him to go dark.
It definitely seems like he's gonna go freaky and get horny with it, especially with Ellen, and but I'm hoping it also has that a lot of kills, a lot of deaths, and stuff like that. And it like you said, it takes a page from this movie and kind of just Nosferatu. Count Orlok is like the harbinger of death. He just brings death wherever he goes. That was another thing, was they changed the town obviously to a Germanic town. Right. It was set in Germany obviously because it was a German film, so when he goes to the town, he just brings death with him, and I really want him to focus on that in this movie. I'm really hoping that, like you said, it's a horror movie first, and then we get like some of the freak stuff maybe, tied in, because Eggers has shown that he likes to do that with his last couple movies, especially The Northman and The Lighthouse. He gets a little freaky sometimes. So, but I think that style could work for a movie like this. So
sure.
I'm excited.
I agree 100%. I also hope I'm actually interested because I haven't looked at promotional stuff. I'm curious of Orlok's look in the new movie versus this one, because I think his look in this one is creepy and scary, especially for when it came out. But it's very it stands out. It's iconic. So I'm really curious to see how he goes with the look in the new movie. And I hope he also keeps him in the shadows, because we don't really get a full glimpse of him till the end of Act 1 in the original. So I'm hoping that, in typical horror fashion, less is more. I don't want him to be like the new Salem's Lot, they're all splattered on the screen right away. I want him to build it up, which I know he will, because that's a must for Nosferatu. But I'm really curious about the look. I'm very, very curious.
Yeah, the look hasn't been spoiled for me. I've seen like the promotional shots of like the back of Bill Skarsgård and stuff, so I haven't seen like his face or anything. The glimpses I've seen, it does look different, but it does look very monsterish. So he doesn't look like a handsome, Dracula. So he's keeping that like disgusting evil look, almost like it almost reminds me of Salem's Lot, kind of like a Salem's Lot, like a creature. Yeah, so not to hype you up too much. Everyone knows that Salem's Lot is Ant's Jam, not the new one, obviously, not the 2024
not the new one. Watch that episode, guys.
Another thing I wanted to highlight was, for people who didn't know, was a big deviation that Nosferatu pulled off that has stuck with the genre, the vampire genre, was the fact that Dracula in the original novel, Bram Stoker's novel, did not die to sunlight. He was not, completely, he came out at night and he didn't really go in the sun, but I believe the sun only like kind of hampered his abilities, like his supernatural abilities, but he was still able to walk around in the sun. So when Nosferatu came out, Count Orlok, he dies as soon as he hits the sun. The sun kills him instantly, and that kind of has stuck ever since that movie, and that's been kind of a staple for vampires moving forward. So
that's like the staple of the more as it got more modern vampire movies, and I actually like that because I like that there's a finality to this movie and to the story. Whereas I don't know, it just makes it feel more impactful, especially when you have a shot of the sun rising, and then it builds up the emotion. So I'm curious to see what Eggers keeps from this story versus the original novel, and I want to see I hope it's different, but I hope he keeps the vibe of this.
Yeah, what I'm really looking forward to is that ending when he dies. I'm assuming he's going to die in this movie. I don't think he's going to go that far deviated, but are they going to do the big set piece where Ellen tricks Count Orlok into coming into her bedroom? I mean, because that's a pretty cool scenario that I really think could benefit from a modern director.
Right.
1922, they were hampered by their limitations, but that was a pretty cool premise, how he couldn't resist Ellen and she tricks him to stay and suck her blood until sunlight. So I really want to see if that's like the big payoff at the end of this movie. I'm assuming it's going to be some version of that. So that's going to be really cool to see kind of, how they handle that in this new movie. I'm excited for that. That's going to be a cool climax. Like, is Thomas Hutter going to play a bigger role like towards the end, or is it just going to be kind of Ellen and him, those two? I mean, there's a lot of different moving parts that he could kind of work with.
Yeah, because Hutter definitely drove the first half of this one, and then Ellen kind of took over the reins for the finale. But it seems like, Lily Rose Depp is going to be like the major player in the new one. But we will see. There's a lot of characters in the new one. There's a lot of exciting actors, so I'm excited. I hope Hutter has more of an active part in this finale as well in the new one. Yeah, I liked him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm sure he's going to balance the characters a little bit better than this original movie did. And, the whole world is his oyster with this movie because we can speak now, that the characters are going to have dialogue.
He can play so much, dude. He can play so much. It's like playtime for him.
Exactly. It's like an open sandbox for him. And as long as he hits the major points, and like you said, he captures that vibe, it's going to be special. Yeah.
I'm just looking at we're talking about the original, but we have Nicholas Hoult playing Hutter. He's a great actor. So I'm just excited to see all these actors take on this fucking iconic classic story.
Yeah.
What about
go ahead.
Do you like the black and white and the silent? Talk to me about the black and white and the silent. Because it's special to me that we have. I know we have the text and everything, but it for this, when it was filmed, it adds to the mood, the silentness of the movie. So again, that's something that Eggers also has to play with. He has the sound design, he has the score, but he has to be careful because the reason why this was so classic and iconic and scary and the start of the whole genre is because of the silence. So I'm hoping he plays with silence a bit too in the new movie. I think that would be cool to pay homage to this.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I kind of wanted more of it, like less dialogue.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The score, the remastered version that we get. So just again, not to be too much of a history buff. So Bram Stoker's widow sued the filmmakers of Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, and they won in court. So the judge deemed that all copies be destroyed. Luckily, not every copy was destroyed of this film. They were able to kind of salvage the film and stitch it together. I forget what company did it. It was like a museum or some sort of historical film company was able to find enough copies to stitch together a cohesive movie that's, for better or for worse, an accurate representation. They redid the score. So, we're not obviously watching the original print and, of this film, but I kind of wish that this remastered version had a little bit less score and it wasn't so prominent. At least on my TV. I mean, it was like in your face the whole movie. So again, I wish it was kind of a little bit toned back. We got a little bit more like actual silence, kind of like Dracula from 1931. Really played on that silence, and that was what made it. That was what made it really creepy. So, no, you're right though. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles that in this new movie.
Yeah, so I just read the trivia. Yeah, so all the known prints and negatives were destroyed under the terms of the settlement by his widow, and they resurfaced through second generation reels from other countries. So that's why it's kind of like stitched together, which is fast. That's so fascinating to me.
I know.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's crazy.
That's mostly why I enjoy going back and watching a film like this. The fact that it was saved from history.
Mm-hmm.
And it should, by all intents and purpose, it should be gone and erased. And who knows how many films from this era were erased and were just, maybe they didn't make money, so the filmmakers or the movie studios just kind of burned them, and we never heard from them again. So, especially these foreign movies. This isn't Hollywood. This is a, company based in Germany, and the movie didn't do well either. It's not like it was a huge box office success. This production studio, I forget what their name was, but this was their only movie, and then they went bankrupt. So probably because they got sued.
Damn lawsuits.
So it's just really fascinating that we're able to kind of experience this film, because by any conventional means it should be gone. So thank you to people who have kind of restored it, because it is, you talk about the ethics of it and stuff, and it is, it wasn't right that they ripped off Dracula because they couldn't get the rights.
They tried their best to like tiptoe, and it didn't work.
Yeah. So it's still, whether or not you agree with that or not, this is still history, cinema history.
Oh, for sure.
Horror history, for sure.
And this is the silent film. Minus all the Charlie Chaplin films, this is the like silent horror film, I will say. This is the one that everyone says, oh my god. So
I kind of talked about like the first horror films in the 1910s and stuff.
Right.
When most people think of like the origins of horror, it's Nosferatu. It goes
to this.
It goes right to Nosferatu, and then, like I said, it gets into kind of the Universal stuff in the 30s. But yeah, Nosferatu. Like Frankenstein was predated this, but again, it wasn't really horror. Like, this was horror. This was fucking scary. This still is, like, we're talking about the themes in 2024, the end of 2024, and we're still talking about like how creepy these themes are. So that just goes to show you kind of how timeless this movie is, and this story is, especially.
Do we have a production budget on the new one? I do want him to play, but I want him to keep it simple too. I'm just curious to see how much they gave him to make the new one. Look it up quick.
It definitely seems like it's a pretty...
It's big.
Big
like it
scale.
Looks like,
the set pieces and stuff.
But I hope it still keeps the, isolation.
I doubt it was like $100 million. So
no, it can't. It's a horror. Yeah. And it's rated R, correct? Yeah, it's rated. Thank God. Okay.
Kidding me?
I don't think I have there's no info on that.
That'll come out sooner.
I'm curious.
Sooner or later, yeah.
Yeah, this is today's generation, you can say what you want. They're not going to love this, but it's a well-respected movie that I'm happy. This is why I'm never going to be someone who like shits on remakes, because when the new ones come out, it makes the younger generation go back to the old stuff. Whether you like the remake or not, it brings the original back up in conversation. So that's why I will never, ever, ever shit on remakes. Unless you remake, like, don't remake Jaws and don't remake Scream. But, other than that, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It always brings you back to, like, what started it all.
Well, it's like we said, there have been remakes of Nosferatu. There's been a couple
different attempts. 8,000 interpretations, you know what I mean, too?
Yeah, but Nosferatu especially. But, yeah, this is 120 years old, so it's due for, like, a really good remake. So, we can bash remakes. I know they're making the new American Psycho, which I think is a little unnecessary because that's still kind of a modern film. That's kind of silly. They remade The Strangers, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. That I knew was going to just not be my cup of tea. So I understand. Right. I'm a fan of remakes too when done correctly with the source material, but sometimes it does go a little, like, I understand why people kind of think it's a little too much as well, because there is hit or misses with them.
Oh, that's always going to happen. But the thing is, when you have a source material that's like not a movie, if it's a novel or something, that opens it up because it can be a different interpretation. Like, it doesn't have to be just a remake of a movie. And like, even like something like The Strangers Chapter 1, I'm like, that was unnecessary. I wish because that looks like from The Strangers Chapter 2 they're going to actually do their own thing. So I'm like, why don't you just do that in the first one instead of doing like a loose remake of a better movie?
Yeah.
And again, I thought that one was, I didn't hate that one like everyone, but I'm like, this is not necessary to go to your own idea right away, like they seem to be doing in Chapter 2. So I'm like, I always will champion remakes, so whether I like it or not, I'm like, yeah, go for it.
That's another thing that I kind of am curious to see, because I know, again, I haven't seen a ton, but I know Eggers is a huge fan of the source material of the book.
Oh.
So is he making this as kind of the original Nosferatu did and kind of taking from the book? Or is he going to focus on remaking the movie that we're talking about? Or is it going to, I'm sure it's going to be a mixture of both. But it's going to be interesting to see how much he takes from Bram Stoker's Dracula and how much he takes from the movie. I mean, there's certain things that you have to take from the movie. Like I said, they did deviate from the book, and it is iconic enough to where you can't not do it. So I'm expecting that, but I'm also expecting him to pull from some new things from the book that maybe we haven't seen, especially in this movie. So yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's going to pull a Mike Flanagan with this one, when like Mike Flanagan took from the OG Shining and the source material for Doctor Sleep, he blended it. I think he's going to do the same, but he has to do a lot of the movie because, like you said, it's more vicious, the movie, than your typical gothic romance, for that standard. And he says he's making a vicious vampire movie, so give me the viciousness. I don't want to see it's not going to be a romance. I can tell it's not going to be a romance, but I want it to be vicious. I really want the viciousness for this one.
No, I mean, the way that Lily Rose Depp has described it is it's a lot of body acting. It almost seems like it's like a possession, like she's being like under his spell the entire movie. Kind of like the original, Ellen is kind of under his spell. So I don't think it's going to have too much like traditional romance vibes. It's going to be more of like Orlok kind of just putting Ellen under his spell and her being almost possessed by this demon creature.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I know.
Again, I have really I know everyone's freaking out about it, but I've been purposely my new thing about new movies is I'm staying away from anyone talking about reviews. I want to go in and have my own thoughts, and I don't want to be spoiled by anything. So I'm very, very excited. It would be cool to do it. I mean, I'm saying this now, but it would be cool if they had a double feature just to go from this one to that one, just to see, everything that's going to change, and to pay respect and see what's different and see what's the same.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have the Never Split Up podcast. I hope everyone's listening to this before they head to the theater, and they can kind of get a little history lesson.
This is the last big horror movie of the year. Yeah, history lesson. I'm excited for the new one.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to cover with the original Symphony of Horror? Count Orlok. So you love his design, his kind of more.
I'm looking at a picture right now, and it's just it's so good. That's why I brought up. I'm really curious, but the OG design with even his fingers alone, it's just it's creepy.
Yeah, him going up the stairs, the shadow with the
Well, that's
they really like you said before. It was almost two different movies. The first half was a lot of Thomas Hutter. And then the second half, kind of, he went away, and it was more focused on Ellen. The second half of the movie, some of these shots, when he's on the boat and he's killing everyone on the boat, that was probably my favorite sequence. When he's, stalking, that one low shot where it's below deck and you see Nosferatu walk across the screen from above deck.
It's so good.
Was so good. Yeah, so they really, the cinematography, they really had fun, the second half of this movie, for sure. And some of the shots are definitely iconic. I mean, obviously we get the probably the most iconic is him rising from the coffin. That's
one of them,
yeah. I know you say why one of them because there's a couple different ones, but yeah, I know.
I feel like most of the time, a lot of the time, Orlok's on screen. I'm that's that iconic shot. That's that iconic shot.
Yeah, him in the doorway. I mean, there's so many.
My god, it's so good. Yeah, but I feel like his look is unmatched. It's so simplistic, but that's why it's so scary. So that's why I'm just I looked at the budget for the new one because I don't think he will, but I want practical. I don't need any CGI-ness in the new one. I know it's Eggers, so I don't think he will.
Yeah, it's Eggers.
But you know what I mean?
I don't think he's going
to I just want simple.
I know you have PTSD from Salem's Lot.
I know, I really do.
I really think we're in good hands.
I don't think he will because
the practical,
this is more sophisticated, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping I'm hoping. I'm just really curious. I know like Skarsgård likes to play too with the look, so I'm just curious to see what the fuck he's doing.
Again, I don't want to spoil too much for you because I know you try to stay away, but apparently his look is like even more transformative than Pennywise. And it's all practical.
That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, people are just going ape shit for this look. So I don't want to hype it too much, but because I didn't see his look yet. I've been very careful. I know his voice was leaked on the internet, which I'm really, really pissed about. Yeah.
Oh, I have not seen that. Thank God.
There was like a bunch of big horror accounts like discussing film and stuff. They posted a clip of his voice
of the audio
of the movie.
Oh, that's messed up. It's not even out yet.
I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. Thankfully, I was able to kind of avert that. But I know a lot of people were really pissed off because, rightfully so. I mean, that's going to be one of the big reveals: is what the fuck does Count Orlok sound like? And
And these days, when you have studios who the trailer, like they put everything in the trailer just to get your butt in the theater, where this one, the studio actually respected the filmmaker. And was like, so that's, to me, that kind of stuff, I don't like that.
I'm pretty sure it was a leak. I mean, there was like major accounts that were posting it. I don't think it was the studio. It was someone, leaking it, but it looked like it was like a scene between a couple characters and his voice was in it. Luckily, I didn't hear it, so I didn't get it spoiled. I'm glad you didn't get it spoiled, but that was going around like last week, and I was like really bummed out that people had to get it spoiled for them.
Talking about Bill Skarsgård, it's because obviously we know it, and we've seen how his interpretation from Pennywise compared to Tim Curry, where he really did do his own thing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what he brings from the OG to this one, if he's going to retain any of the physical characteristics, the slow moving from that compared to his performance in this one, because he's our age pretty much, and he's a fucking horror legend already, so I know he knows what he's doing, but I'm just curious to see how his interpretation is going to be of Count Orlok. I'm excited.
Me too. Do you know the runtime for this new one? What the runtime is? That's
actually a very good question. I'm curious. I'm not going to assume Eggers is probably over 2 hours because it's Eggers.
Probably. Which I'm sorry.
About, I like Eggers, but yeah. 2 hours and 13 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So I'm expecting him to have a bigger role.
Yeah. I want him spread out though. Like I want him sprinkled at the right points.
Yeah. I hope so too. But I'm sure he's gonna play a
2 hours
role.
and 13 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
We have time to play with this.
We got time to play with, I mean...
So then good, because I want a slow burn.
I
do want a slow burn.
He's going to be in it with the rats, so...
I mean, again, the strength of the OG... a slow burn to me in this scenario is extra terrifying, so I hope it's a slow burn, but I hope when it goes there, it just goes there too at the same time.
Yeah.
I have my... Eggers, again, I know you're like up here with Eggers, and I'm like, I like him, but I really want him to show the horror. Like, I want him to go full throttle. Like, I'm ready for a full throttle, like, horror balls to the wall,
I'm ready for full throttle too, but I also hear what you're saying. I think he knows how to take his time. I mean, you look at The Witch, right? I mean, The Witch really took its time.
The Witch builds.
Until it got to its crescendo. So, I feel like he knows how to build that sense of dread and suspense. And the fact that he, like you said, more than any of his other movies, his first 3 films, I don't think I've ever heard him talk about his films this way. He said that this is a horror movie first.
Right.
He like a full-on horror movie. I don't think he's ever said that about his first 3 films. I mean, The Northman definitely isn't, but even, The Lighthouse and The Witch, which could be horror adjacent. The Witch I would consider a horror film, but it doesn't fully go there in terms of scale and scope, which I know this movie is going to. So we're in for a treat, man. This is going to be an interesting.
Well, like I think you've said it before. I think he's going to take little things from each of those movies and combine it, but just go to the next level and bring it into a full-on horror movie. Because I think right now my favorite one of his is The Witch, just because of simplistic story and how it is more of a horror movie. But I do appreciate things in The Lighthouse more than The Witch, and I appreciate some of the set pieces in The Northman more than others. So it's like I like things from each of his movies, but not one single movie has completely wowed me yet. So I'm very
and I
curious.
did hear him talk about this in the press junket for this new movie, and he did because he's been trying to get this done for almost 10 years. I think 2015 was when they first, And that was when The Witch came out around the same time. So I believe a reporter did ask him, the timing of everything. And he says he is very grateful because he is now the director he was in 2015. And he's learned a lot and has grown as a director and has been able to experiment with his first 3 movies. And he's kind of added that to this movie. And the fact that he has this cast, the cast that he has, he wouldn't have gotten in 2015. So it like you said, it feels like it's all kind of crescendoing and culminating into this one big extravaganza that's going to be hopefully his best work to date.
He definitely would have had a different cast. I'm just looking because I'm curious. I'm looking at trivia, and Harry Styles was originally. I'm like, what?
That's a big. Yeah, I know that was a big news.
Oh, Nicholas.
When that happened.
I mean, it was gonna be. I mean, I love Lily Rose Depp, but Anya Taylor-Joy was originally
Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah.
Ooh, that would have been fucking awesome.
Yeah.
No, but and I know he loves I think we're gonna really bring it back to the OG movie because I just read Eggers co-directed a stage production of Nosferatu in high school.
Oh, this is his
baby.
Yeah.
This is his baby.
Yep.
Okay, all right, I'm excited.
This is like his passion project. This is why he became a director.
So maybe this is the one that makes me fall in love with him because he's so passionate about it.
Oh, he's great. I'm already in love with him. He's one of my favorite working directors.
I know,
especially in horror.
Well,
so I just
shout out to our 2010s horror movies because The Lighthouse made an appearance on that list for you. So guys, check out that one. Nolan's a big Eggers fan. So
yeah. And if you guys want to check out the original Nosferatu, Symphony of Horror, I think it's worth throwing on, especially if you've never seen it before. I mean, the story's very familiar. It's Dracula. We've seen it 1,000 times. They do change some things, but I think it's worth, especially if you've never checked it out, before checking out this new movie so you can kind of see what Eggers takes and doesn't take from the film. I think it's important to kind of have a baseline of what kind of vibe we're expecting to get. Or if you want to go in totally blind, I mean, that's cool too. If you want to just listen to us talk on this episode and you don't want to watch the movie, that's fair game too, because I can only imagine someone who isn't familiar with any of this or vampires or Dracula. I mean, someone takes like their grandma to go see this and she's like, what the fuck's going on? I mean, that would be a cool experience too. So whatever floats your boat. But this is a recommend for me only because I'm a movie lover, a cinema lover. I love the history of cinema and stuff. And this is kind of where this genre started. So it's really fun to just go back and kind of see what they had to work with and what they did.
Oh, yeah. I would say you hit the nail on the head. I would say with any horror fan or any film fan, it's important and very exciting to see how far we've come, but also like where we started and how creative they had to be to start this genre. So that's why I appreciate this movie so much, because it is a first of its kind and it's a silent movie, but you still see tropes from the source material and from this movie going on today, 100 years later. So to me, it's just fascinating. And I when I was watching, I'm like, it's just important. And it's crazy that this is what started it all. So, I mean, if you're a film fan alone, like this has to be a must watch. And I think it's cool. I'm happy that we did the episode we did because I'm going to be excited with having some of these shots and the moments in my head, fresh in my head when I go see the new movie. So, very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. But that pretty much wraps up this episode, guys. Merry Christmas. We're releasing this before Christmas. And happy holidays. Our next episode is going to be our big year-end review, kind of our top 10
stressful
episode. The stressful one for Ant. Ant loves his lists and hates his list at the same time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And have fun if you're going to the cinema, seeing Nosferatu. It's going to be a blast. And we'll see you next time. This is the Never Split Up podcast. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Never Split Up Pod. Definitely subscribe to us on YouTube. We're very close to our goal of 200 subscribers.
Yes, guys.
We're trying to get there before the new year, so we would appreciate that. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.